Hello, welcome back. Mike from Canavan Wealth doing Mike Reads the Journal. It's Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2023. Let's jump into it. The market's finally caught up to us. We are down, if we go over the last 5 days, down about 1.6%. We've been steadily up since the beginning of the year, and you can go back to about October, and we've been doing pretty well. So a negative week here really doesn't worry me. I think this is largely driven by the current inflation report. This was not expected. So we were down, but not down as much as we wanted to be. There's a better graph down here. If you've been following along on the channel, I've been talking a lot about kind of the downturn by the numbers and interest inflation rates. Where the Fed funds rate falls out in the next 6 to 18 months is going to be a big determining factor as to how the bond market is viewed, because the bond market of the last 10 to 14 years, when the Fed funds rate was near zero, was very unattractive. So, if we work off of those assumptions, which may not be correct depending on where the Fed funds rate falls out, that's going to be the real story. That's what I'm watching closely. This graph I think is interesting. So core, this is gas, food, and everything else. This has went up really, really high right when gasoline was high, and food is largely driven by fuel costs. Core is this, it's effectively everything else. They take out gas and food because of how oil dependent it is. So it's been kind of even here for a better part of a year now. And services continues to go up, which is not surprising with the labor market the way it is. So we're at record low unemployment, and which is very odd for raising interest rates as aggressively as we are, but the labor market is very tight in the US. So services, kind of continues to go up. That's haircuts and all sorts of other things that are not necessarily material dependent. Today is definitely the tale of two stories. So there's the inflation report that was not good, but this was an article that actually I think came out Monday or possibly this weekend on the Wall Street Journal, which was a poll of economists talking about whether they think it's going to be a hard landing or a soft landing. So this is the story of the Fed, where if you raise interest rates this aggressively, the expectation is that you'll typically drive the economy into a recession, which is obviously negative, but we need to get inflation under control. So virtually both parties, everyone understands that this is why we're doing it, and it's important that we're doing it this way. But as I mentioned, the unemployment rate has not moved. In fact, it's gotten better through this time. So it's really hard to call something a recession when you're at 40-year lows for the unemployment rate. This is that probability of the U.S. going into a recession as effectively polled by economists. This is back in the 2008 global financial crisis. At this point, we were effectively in a recession, so there's no shock there. This is a number, this is also through COVID, when I don't really think it was so different than a recession in terms of shutting down the economy and how well it came back. This is kind of an outlier. It's tough to say that we went into a recession. Effectively, yes, we went through high unemployment, but it was for very different reasons. So now here we are now with the inflation and rising interest rates, but it really hasn't materialized in terms of the economy kind of falling apart, right? The stock market and the economy are two very different things. The stock market is always forward-looking. Economy is, kind of what we're living in right now. So we've seen this downtick in economists perceiving that a recession is coming. So it may not be that it's a not so bad or bad, soft or hard. It may be that there's just no landing and we just somehow miraculously go through this. Both things can happen, right? We can have sticky inflation and 4% Fed funds rate or something, and unemployment can stay at record lows. They are not mutually linked, but really the next 6 to 18 months can tell us that. The last article, this is an opinion piece. You can see it up here. I usually avoid opinion pieces, although this is from the editorial board. They're usually a little less political, let's say. This is talking about everything that's going on with the balloons. And the story here is that we know nothing about the balloons, which the point this makes is that if that's the case and we are needing to learn more and it's a national security risk, which I'm sure it is, then just come out and say that so that so that we have something to go on, which we're not getting a whole lot of communication from the government. The reason I wanted to cover this is I was actually a submariner in the Navy, and I dealt with a lot of sensitive topics, top secret missions, things like that. Nothing super exciting, don't worry. And I will tell you that for the US to keep something secret, it's virtually impossible these days. Small secrets, very, very important things, I have no doubt that they can, but we live in a world of information where it's really, really hard to keep major stories like this under wraps, right? When when it came out that, like, this was viewed by the public, we have no idea whether that's the first time the US government figured out what was going on with obviously lots of things in the sky. I think they've shot down 4 or maybe 5 if we start counting some of the other countries. Um, it's or whether they were in the middle of learning about it themselves and then all of a sudden it became public knowledge and then they have to do something about it, right? So there sometimes a lot of this is politically driven. I know through my own experience that there's very often times that there are clandestine operations against the US that we know about, but we benefit more from it by not tipping off the other side that we know about it. I'll just leave it at that. So it is just because they were not reacting to it in the past or not reacting to it in the way that you wanted, or would have perceived would be the ideal way in the current session, doesn't mean that the U.S. is not benefiting from what's going on. So I, of course, know nothing else about these balloons, and I think the administration is doing fine. I just think it'd be better if they came out and told us that if they're just still figuring it out, just tell us that you're still figuring it out and we'll wait a little bit. So that is it. I hope this has been helpful, and it's Valentine's Day, so make sure you go get your significant other some little knickknack to show your affection if that's what you do. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you.